Hey everybody, and welcome to another In Conversation With. If you're watching on the Urlichs live channel on Friday, thanks for joining us. It'd be great if you could get involved in the chat below. Or if you're watching this on a replay on the YouTube channel, thanks for joining. If you could like and subscribe, that would be fantastic. Okay, so my guest this week, she's currently working as a developer evangelist at CodeFresh, and she's on a learning journey with 100 Days of Kubernetes. My guest this week is Anais Urlichs. So hi, how are you doing there, Anais? Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. This is amazing.
Not at all. No, thanks for joining in. And I probably didn't pain you too much then with those 3 or 4 takes of the introduction. But thanks for bearing with me.
It's great.
So, Anais, obviously the main reason that I thought I'd invite you on this show and just have a general chat on one of these episodes was really because of the amount of stuff that you're putting back into the community at the moment. So I'd love to talk to you about that. But before we delve into all that goodness, I don't know if you can give yourself a little bit of an introduction for our viewers.
Yeah, definitely. So my background is a bit more complex, I guess. I didn't work at all in the blockchain space, in the DevOps space until like a few months ago. I was working in the blockchain space. I worked for the past years in the blockchain space and was contributing to open source projects there in community management, developer relations, developer education. So a lot of developer advocacy. And then I came across CodeFresh, and they had this really nice position, also as developer evangelist. And so I joined CodeFresh and got started in DevOps. And before my interview, I was actually Googling what is Docker, what is Kubernetes, and I had no idea what was expected, let's say. I just knew that it sounded really interesting and really exciting. And that's something that I want to get involved in. And I had my fair share, let's say, of the blockchain space. So I decided to make a jump into a different industry and get started somewhere else.
Oh, that's really cool, Anais. Yeah, I think, obviously just before we started the recording, we had a quick chat around the fact that you did work in this, in the blockchain space, in crypto. I mean, I don't know if you can give the viewers a little bit of an insight as to what that's like and what your role in that position was, because that's it's quite a cool place to be, I guess, at the moment.
Yeah, it sounds all really exciting. It's like, this really shiny new tech that everybody wants to adopt, wants to get involved in, wants to call their business doing, let's say. Everybody wants to run on a blockchain, right? I actually got started right after university a few years ago. A few friends of mine had a startup that was using Ethereum as their blockchain technology, which is one of those public blockchains. And so they kind of got me enticed with what blockchain is and the philosophy behind, and open community collaboration that is incentivized through token economics and all of that fancy stuff. So I worked first as a technical analyst for actually a VC fund, and just writing reports about different blockchain projects. There's a lot of research that's actually done within universities. So I was in close collaboration with different study groups, with different university groups and academia itself, and also projects in the space, and writing reports on their technology. And then afterwards, I got involved with a project called Near Protocol that went on the adventure of building their own blockchain. So I joined the team when it was quite small, and worked with them for over a year, and helped build their community and developer education and projects and so on. So that was my role in the blockchain space. Yeah. So it was quite diverse, cool. quite changing. And what I guess, to be more specific, what I think is really exciting about the blockchain space, and what we found, let's say, also within DevOps, is the community collaboration and the high focus on community-driven projects. That's my main, I guess, passion to collaborate, to share knowledge, to reuse knowledge, and get more
No,
community members involved.
absolutely, Anais. I think obviously when I came across you first on your YouTube channel, I saw you active on Twitter sharing some of the stuff. And at the time, you were doing a similar journey to me. I was on the 100 Days of Cloud, and I saw a tag pop up where with one of your posts, 100 Days of Kubernetes. So I suppose that transition, like you say, to move over into this new role, focus on developer advocacy in the DevOps space. I mean, talk us through that a little bit, if you don't mind. Just let us know what that role is like with CodeFresh at the moment, and you know what the expectations are for that kind of role that you're doing at the moment. That'd be cool to know.
Yeah. So generally, as a developer evangelist or advocate, it really depends on the company that you're working with, on what kind of projects you get involved with, what your day-to-day job will look like. At CodeFresh specifically, I'm working closely with working on the documentation, working on blog posts, making sure that we communicate ways in which the product can be used, ways that we can make the lives of developers easier, and so on. And also that, like, along those lines, I'm doing evangelist work on social media, but also applying to conferences, giving webinars, and really interactive content that gets more people involved and more people engaged with the product itself and ways that the technology can be used. So it's a highly technical role, but it's also highly focused on the communication aspect. It's like in between, if that makes sense.
No, it does, absolutely. I mean, like I say, you're doing a fantastic job so far. I think,
Thank you.
You know, what you've done over the last few months as I've been following your journey, so to speak, has been phenomenal. I think, you explained that just before we started recording about that jump into DevOps was a space that was new to you from a technical perspective. I mean, talk us through some of the things that you've your learning journey, if you like. What have you kind of had to pick up, and how have you gone about those kind of things, Anais?
Yeah. So like you mentioned, there's 100 Days of Cloud, and that, I guess, caught my eye first. And I first engaged with that community. I'm on their Discord. They are a great community. They put out amazing content. However, what I saw at CodeFresh is that I actually had to know more about Kubernetes and cloud native technologies, and specifically Docker and how containers can be used. So I felt like if I'm focusing broadly on cloud technologies first, I would miss out on the nitty gritty detail of Kubernetes itself and how containers can be used and managed. And there's like such a vast landscape just about that. So I thought, instead of taking the approach of just broad first and then focusing on different technologies, which is obviously great if you're getting started, right? If you're not sure like what is useful, what will get you the next job, what will advance you, it's great if you have like a broad understanding of the space, of how different cloud providers provide different technology, how they can be used, and so on. Then that's amazing. And once you are within a company then, and they use specific tech stack, that's when you want to focus on those technologies, right? And get really familiar with those. So I took the opposite approach and was like, okay, CodeFresh uses these kind of technologies, so I should know those and be really good at them, and then I can expand into different areas. And so at the beginning, when I just got started, I was highly overwhelmed and I did not know where to start. I spent hours Googling for the right content, since I didn't know whom to follow within the space, right? You were actually one of the first people I followed, because I was like, wow, you're doing like a similar journey actually, you're creating this content and you're diving into those different products and what the community does and how you can enhance the knowledge within the community. So you were actually one of my, let's say, role models in that adventure.
I wouldn't call it that, Anais. I think it was just you stumbled across my my handle on Twitter and thought, oh look, he's got some flashy lights. What's he up to?
that as well. The flashy lights definitely make a difference. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I mean, it's fantastic to see. And I think, just to pick you up on what you said there, and it's not unusual for a lot of people, in my experience within the industry, that the rate of change of technology and the speed of change and the way that new technologies are being introduced, I think we're all pretty much in that same boat, where we look and we all get overwhelmed in different ways. And I guess it's having that focus. And I suppose for you, the shift and the move into this new position, looking at the technologies, as you've said, that the company were really honing in on, which was containers, Kubernetes, Docker, that kind of area. I mean, how has that worked out for you? Because, you know, obviously I've seen your YouTube channel. It's going from strength to strength. You're putting out some fantastic content. And I guess, I mean, is that you learning and then putting the content out to help others? Or, you know, how do you go about that, Anais, in terms of when you learn something? You know, what's your process for that learning and taking that new knowledge in?
Yeah, that's interesting. So it depends whether I'm learning about a technology first for a work-related project, or because I came across something on social media and I'm like, well, I should probably have a look at that. So if I'm starting to learn about something new, let's say the other day I looked at Portainer, which is basically providing a UI, a dashboard, so you don't have to use directly Kubernetes or Docker. You can use the dashboard instead and basically interact with your resources through a UI. So it abstracts, it's a different layer of abstraction. So how I went about it is just basically Googling it and trying to find links that looked useful to me, and in terms of providing the information that I was looking for, that kind of got me to the next step of knowing how I could use it, how I could try it out, and what it is and its purpose. So it's really like me, or like specifically on my YouTube channel, I tried to look at something new. I spent maybe an hour or two on it, trying to understand it. And then it's usually when I record, it's just me going for it. And sometimes I spend 2 more hours recording because what I meant to do in the recording doesn't actually work when I then try it out, right?
Yeah,
and it's so it's a lot of it is really like showing that the first time it usually won't work. One of the last videos on Helm, it took me ages because some of the Helm charts that I tried to use, they didn't run on my Kubernetes cluster, and I was trying, like, tinkering with it, and it just didn't work. And I want to show that this is what's part of your learning journey. You will run into walls, let's say, right? It won't be as smooth, and you will get frustrated, and you won't know what to do. And it's just about like keeping going. And at some point, you will be considered an expert by this space because you just kept going by these little steps, right? And everybody who learned about it went through those steps and bumped probably into similar errors, right?
I think, you know, there's a statement that I always use is that, you know, when somebody asks you, you know, are you an expert in a certain area or not? And I always say the only difference between somebody that knows something and somebody that doesn't is that the person that knows it just didn't get phased. They just kept going. They just pushed their way through all those issues. And I mean, when, you know, something that obviously we're doing now, we're recording a video for streaming or on YouTube. I suppose there's that element added on top as well, because like you say, you want to get something right and you want to get a little demo to show the concept of the thing that you've just learned. And, you know, you're all about now, hang on a second, we're recording this and I got to say something right. So there's that extra element as well. So, I mean, for those that are kind of watching these videos, I suppose that's a little bit of an insight that it's great to sit there and play and tinker with these technologies, I guess. But then when you're trying to format it, you know, you want to format it into a nice little video, and you've been so successful. I mean, I've watched quite a number of your videos actually, and the way that you put them together, you know, even down to, you know, things like the thumbnails. You put a lot of time and effort into this, Anais, and it's really looking great. And you know, I think that was another reason I thought, well, I need to get you on to talk to you about this, because it's fantastic stuff. And you're doing so well on your own. Anything I can do to kind of help boost your numbers and boost your following is great, because I think it's all fantastic stuff that you're putting together here. So have you got a set agenda to how you learn things? Or, you know, you mentioned there sometimes you might see something on social media. You know, have you kind of sat back and written a bit of a script to show, you know, a particular technology and work your way through it? How do you manage that? Or, you know, or do you just take things at random? What's your method there, Anais?
I actually wish I would do that. I wish I would be that organized and be able to sit down and write an agenda. And I tried that, and it just ends up literally me seeing something else that looks really shiny and be like, oh, let's try that out instead. And diverging from my initial agenda. Also, so I kind of have this. So my perspective is that as soon as you start writing something down and making a plan, it becomes more of a task, of something that you will have to do, right? Versus if you're more impulsively looking at things and be like, oh, let's try and explore this, or let's try and see if I can install this on my terminal locally, right? And you just try it out and you see if whether or not it's working. Then it's more of an experience, and it's more of a of an experiment, let's say, than if you write it down. So I wish I could, or like my goal is once I'm finished or once I'm further ahead in my journey, that I provide like a more structured overview and maybe organize those different videos in different order depending on how I see would be better for new learners to start with. Right now I'm not there yet.
No,
So,
well,
yeah.
I mean, you could have fooled me. I mean, it's looking fantastic so far. I just thought, you're looking at all the different areas of infrastructure as code. It's not just Kubernetes that you're learning. I mean, just looking at the screen that we had there, I'll go back to the desktop. So, I mean, if we take a look at your YouTube channel here, you've kind of you started off with this 100 days of Kubernetes, but just looking at it now, you're looking at Helm, which obviously forms. I'm a complete Kubernetes novice, so anything I say is probably wrong. But as I understand it, Helm is there as part of Kubernetes to deploy certain things. You're talking Terraform there, and then obviously you're breaking in Portainer, like you just mentioned there. I mean, it's great to see that you've got all these different areas within that kind of cluster. Have you learned has anything kind of been eye-opening to you in this kind of early stage of your learning journey in this technology area? Have there been any eureka moments or things you thought, well, that's pretty cool. I want to focus on that a bit more. What's that been like?
Yeah, so I guess this kind of goes into my biggest struggle, because a lot of the technologies that I use and I learn about, they are considered like by the industry really advanced, something that you will implement if your team is like in a certain setting, let's say, with certain kinds of resources, right? And usually businesses would not necessarily implement those technologies if they don't have a clear reason, or if they are not in a certain position, or it would be more, it would go into a certain direction, let's say. So What I struggle the most with is that I don't have the experience of what has development be like when something was highly specific to your machine, when something did not just work out of the box, right? I don't have this struggle, and I think having had that kind of struggle in different areas, and would probably like advance you in different ways and give you more of an eye-opening experience when you then use certain kinds of technologies. For me, it's more about the details where I'm like, oh, that's how it works, right? So it's less like a huge moment of like me discovering something, and more of like specific aspects within the technology of like, oh, this is how it all fits together, kind of stuff. So along those lines, or like sometimes I'm like, oh, that's why everybody likes it. I can see that now, like after trying it too, right? It's like before, I don't know why people talk about it, and then it's like, oh, I tried, nice. Yeah, I can see the difference. So,
no, I'm with you. Yeah, I get you. I mean, did you have any, what from your background perspective and your sort of IT career, what was your back? You've talked about the fact that you worked in crypto for a few years. Did you have any? I mean, I'll call it the traditional infrastructure-y type background that kind of crosses over into some of these areas, or did you come at it completely fresh? What was your experience like there?
Yeah, so my experience is not like that comprehensive, if that makes sense. I have I've done some mainly front-end development, and it was really like, it wasn't too comprehensive. It wasn't like anything fancy, let's say. It was really just pure code, developing applications that run locally and just for demonstrational purposes usually. So it was not really something that was used in production environments. It was all used for demonstration and educational purposes, just to show off how you can use the blockchain that I was working with. And so now it's a huge shift, because now I want to, or like I personally want to focus on what would people then actually use within production. What would they want to use to make their deployment smooth and make them happen, and so on, right? So my experience was really, really shallow, I would say. Like, this is like the first time within the blockchain space, I had like a lot of theoretical knowledge. So it was a lot of explanations, theoretical concepts that didn't translate into something physical. Right?
No, I understand what you mean, but that's I think what you've explained there is, for me, it's kind of enlightening, because I think the industry at the moment, from my position where I sit, I work with a lot of kind of seasoned veterans, if you like, IT professionals, And all of these new technologies are, you know, to say it frankly, alien to a lot of people at the moment. And so, you know, it just goes to show that you don't need that kind of, you know, decades worth of knowledge to kind of jump into these technologies and really make them your own. As you know, I didn't realize that was your background to the extent that you've not necessarily come from that traditional, I call it traditional because a lot of IT pros I speak with have kind of you know, come straight out of college and school and gone into like support roles. It's kind of like a traditional progression through, if you like, the industry. But you know, it's great to see now that there are so many different ways into the IT industry, and it's just cool to hear your take on it. You know, looking at it sort of Kubernetes, it's certainly a space I've not looked at in any great detail at the moment. So, I mean, are there any other areas that you're focusing on at the moment? I mean, we talked about the 100 Days of Kubernetes. In fact, I'll put up because you've started blogging this as well and doing a weekly DevOps Diary blog that you put out to the community, don't you, about with your learning. So, and they're pretty well written, I think. Is probably the best thing. Quite a few little jokes and tongue-in-cheek things that you've got in there, which I found quite amusing as I've read them. But do you want to talk us a little bit about your DevOps Diary that you put together?
Yeah, so I put that together along my videos because a lot of times, like I'm not often a huge video fan. In fact, like I like these kind of podcast conversations, especially right now during these times. But if I'm learning about something, sometimes it's really useful to have a written reference. So I thought, especially like if you go to the top, there's a link to 100 Days of Kubernetes. Yeah, so exactly there. So there are like all the different pages. You can click on that. And then that would lead you like to the notes and to the video reference as well. And I thought it would be nice to have both side by side. So it's really like just this project where I started. I thought, okay, there must be like several more people who are in a similar position or for whom the technology is quite scary. And making it sound more scary or it's not going to help people, like making it sound more complex. And what I'm trying to do is like just to say, hey, I don't know most of it. I'm just trying it out. I'm seeing what I can use, what I understand, and then try to get help on those aspects that I clearly don't understand or don't know about. And everything is just like figuring it out along the way. So this is just me trying to see like if there are others in the community, like is it helpful for them? How can they use it? How can they make use of like me struggling through this, let's say, so they don't have to struggle through this, right? So it's really like, it's about that for me. It's really, how can I share this with others and maybe make their lives a bit easier with it?
I mean, just touching on that point of, it's quite a strange concept I found when I try to explain it to people, this thing of sharing what you're doing with the community. It's almost, I think, if I cast my mind back to when I wasn't so publicly facing, if you want to call it that, and putting stuff out to the community, it's probably fair to say I didn't get it. I didn't understand why you would do that. What's your experience? Because, I mean, for one, I can categorically state some of these learning things, I mean, I need to go back through and pick up because I'm absolutely using your videos to learn
awesome.
And understand. Absolutely. And it's right. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head that if you're learning about something, it doesn't matter about your experience. You're learning something new. Okay, you know, if you've been in the industry a little bit longer, you may have, you know, thoughts and ways in which you can relate it to. But when you're learning something new, if you can do that and put that back out into the community like you've done, I always used to think, why would somebody want to do that? What's your experience been on that? Can you explain why you do that and what that means to you and how it helps you, or does it hinder you? What's your experience been like on that front, Anais?
So I thought it was like, in my head, it was a lot scarier than it actually is. Like right now, it just, if I get like a certain number of views or if people like my posts or so on, it's just me, like it means for me more, well, on one hand that somebody sees the content as being useful, and on the other hand that it seems like I'm doing something right in what I'm doing. So it's really just going about it and trying it out, I guess. So in my mind, it was a lot scarier than it is. And in the end, it helped me to to deepen my knowledge. At the beginning, I wanted to do 100 days of Kubernetes just for myself. It was a completely selfish motive. I had like a few months earlier, I started the newsletter itself before starting the videos specifically on Kubernetes, and the videos were really about me trying to explain it and trying to practice explaining it to a hypothetical audience, let's say. Yeah. So it wasn't with this intention. So yesterday the thought crossed my mind of like, oh, this is going to be out there forever probably. And that was quite it's interesting to go down that road and see like, okay, maybe it's gonna like, how far can this go, right? How far can I take it? Or how far do I want to take it? Because it's a lot of effort to put out edited videos, right?
Definitely, yeah, absolutely. Now, I guess that's what I was aiming at, is because you say that about, you've made me think now this is going to be out there forever. I need to recheck some of my videos, I really do. But no, I mean,
don't worry.
I think from the perspective of when you're doing that, you're spending that time and effort into reading documentation, watching other videos, and installing and configuring things on your own PC, and then you're getting success. And you know, I probably, you can't kind of underestimate how much effort it is to go down and then create a video on top of that. Because I don't know about you, Anais, but for me, I've learned about all the video recording process, you know, literally trying to speak to a camera at least, and trying to, you know, portray a particular theme. Have you found that a bit of a learning journey, as well as learning the technical element of the stuff that you want to know as well?
Oh, it was a disaster for me at the beginning. I now switched to Windows, but before I was using Ubuntu, and I tried to set everything up on my Ubuntu machine, and it just, nothing would want to work together. The camera wasn't working. It wasn't like, it couldn't find it. And it was a complete disaster, everything. So it was really like trying to make it better for each video, right? And you can see in my very first videos, I was actually using like a web-based tool. I can't remember the name right now. And I was just like recording my screen. It was like really simple, right? And you don't need to have great equipment. It's like I started with a laptop, right? It just starts there, and then you try to put something out. There are so many amazing people who have great blog content, right? It's really just it's not about the resources that you have, but what can you come up with that, like ways to share what you know. And it's just really about the knowledge itself, the information. It's not about how you share it. That obviously makes it nicer to view, right?
No, well, absolutely. And you know, I think there's the whole learning journey that you've got about, you know, how you edit videos, how you piece them together, you know, how you get your audio right, how you get, you know, the lighting right. And there's lots of things that go into it that if people that are watching this have not tried, I've personally found it really good fun. And I presume you're the same, and even after those frustrations of not getting things to talk to each other, not get things working, that's part of the techie learning journey as far as I'm concerned. I guess you found it the same way.
Yeah.
I mean, just to kind of shift gears slightly on this now, but I mean, okay, so we've kind of explored your learning journey, the 100 days of Kubernetes, having that focus on a particular theme that has kind of, I guess, helped you structure to a point, doing some content for YouTube and your DevOps Diary newsletter. Are there any other areas off into the distant horizon that you've heard, or you've heard being talked about, whether it be within the company you work for or just personally, that kind of what's the word, make you excited to think, oh wow, I'd like to look into those areas? Have you got any of those kind of things on the horizon, so to speak?
So I definitely, personally, the first thing that I really want to get started is I really want to learn Go and get as good to the point as that I can contribute to those open source projects that I'm using right now, right? Many of them are based on Go, and it's really like, for me, it would be great to be able to contribute. Right now, I'm not at all like acquainted to the language itself, so I'm not trying it. But that's like personally for me, just as I see it as an enabler to get into different areas and understand the technology better to a great extent. So that's like, on that level, on like community contribution level, I guess, what I'm excited about and want to get started. And then otherwise, I want to get more into cloud computing and just understand more about Azure and AWS, because right now I've only used well, I've used Google Cloud and my classes there, but it's a complete different setup. And just so diversifying my understanding, I guess, and trying out more. Yeah.
No,
like right now I'm surface.
No, I mean that's a great call out. Actually, it's funny that you brought up learning a language. Essentially, is what you're talking about, because with other guests on the show, we've talked about that whole thing. I frame it from the background that I've come from, and I come from this traditional operations base. So I'm not a developer, but I'm finding more and more the conversations I'm having with the customers that I speak with, we are moving very fast, at a very fast pace into this DevOps world, this whole infrastructure as code. So the whole concept of learning a language, all of a sudden, it's not necessarily something that, you can kind of overlook, I guess. So I mean, what reasons have you picked Go for? Is there any specific reason, or was it just that you saw, like you say, some community folk using it and you thought it would be a great language to learn? Was there anything else behind it?
I mean, that was really the main point. It was just me seeing that a lot of the projects are written in Go. So I was like, that sounds great. I'm learning, or like I'm using a lot of Java for my degree. So it's not I have enough of it, let's say. So I was just like, okay, there's not that much that interests me in that area. And then the other language that I would like, it was kind of, for me, it was between Rust and Go. It was kind of like a middle way. But Rust is still like getting adoption in many areas. So I thought Go is the most straightforward for me. No. It was a simple like decision in that way.
No, I mean, it's definitely again, for me, not having a developer background, I've seen Go, it's on the rise with the amount of people I've seen talking about it, using it. Obviously, it's from a Microsoft perspective and what they've got from a development side within Azure as their cloud platform. They support a myriad of languages in there, of course. So there's no kind of fixated. I remember years ago it used to be, well, if you learn this particular language, they're the kind of things that you'll be able to go and develop, and to go and do this language, you can develop the other side of the fence. But it seems now that these languages, they're becoming so abstracted and so high level that they've got these frameworks around them that you can kind of do most things with most languages, which is pretty cool. So I think, a general statement, it doesn't seem that you have to focus on a specific language anymore, which is cool. I mean, Go is something I've not personally looked at. I've run off down the Python route now, and a bit of
nice.
.NET and C#. So and see, I've got a book behind me, the big thick Learn Python in a month of Sundays. but I mean, it's all good fun as well. I mean, have you started to dabble in that learning journey yet, Anais, or is that something that you're gonna take a look at once you've done the 100 days challenge?
So I'm kind of like, I'm not too into it right now. Like it's really a time constraint. Like I'm studying in my free time for my computer science degree, so that's taking like a lot of time, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, for me, exactly, it's like a trade-off, right? Like, what can I look into? So it's next on my list. So if you want to learn Go, subscribe to my channel.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's funny because I speak to people now, and I think when I first started my sort of 100 days of cloud, it was, I've got these few things I want to focus on, this, that, and the other. Mm-hmm. And like you say, as you get into it, there are so many shiny things that kind of take your attention away. and I guess the point that I guess I'm trying to say here is that this isn't unusual to everybody's day job. It's the fact that they may, you may be sat here doing your day job. You think that you need to learn this one path of technology, or this one area of technology, but then before you know it, you're being pulled in other directions. And let's face it, not everybody does what you're doing, and get a YouTube channel and start putting the content back out there. And to do that, doing a uni degree at the same time, I can completely understand how you got the time. But I think
I don't know.
Even for somebody that just that is working a 9-to-5 job, that is finding these little shiny elements of technology that they either want to look at for their own personal interests or feel they need to for their job, it's quite a large undertaking. Do you agree? I think. Like we've just had a brief chat over why would you choose Go as a language? Why wouldn't you choose something else? Those decisions, I found that they're quite a difficult. If you're just looking to learn something just for the sake of learning it and having that string to your bow, even the choice of which way do you go is quite a difficult task. You know, you almost have to learn how you need to learn. Do you find it like that, Anais, at the moment, or have you got it kind of fixated, which, you know, the stuff that you want to get onto?
Yeah, so I guess for me it's a bit easier, like, to choose. Well, first of all, it's a lot of like my learning experience, or like what I can, like, you just mentioned the time constraint aspect, right? And a lot of my job is focused on me learning about new technologies, trying them out, showing how they can be used for people who are just getting started as well. It definitely makes it easier if it's part of your job, to where it's enhanced if you learn about those technologies. Other than that, for me, it's more about like not even the specific programming languages or the specific technologies, but just you being able to dive into something and maybe get up and running, like with a Hello World project in an hour or so. That's amazing. Like, if, you know, when you can translate that kind of, like, the processes are usually quite similar on how you get started with a new programming language or a new tool. You look at the documentation, you look at videos, you look maybe at tutorials that exist, you try to find tutorials that suit your interests and needs and so on, and then you try it out, and then from there you start building up, I guess. And I think it's, as like we touched on that earlier, right? Everything is moving so fast. What do you spend your time on, and what should you spend your time on? What do you have to know tomorrow, right? Yeah. And so I think it's much more valuable if you can translate your knowledge from one area to another. And me picking Go as like my focus is really, it's really based on me seeing lots of projects in that area, and also some colleagues mentioned it to me that it would be useful if I would have some knowledge within that area, but it wasn't like a comprehensive decision, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And I think that's, you know, I suppose the one saving grace from what I've seen is that you can pretty much guarantee whatever language you choose at the moment, you're going to be learning, you know, the basic concepts, which you can translate to any programming language that, you know, in my experience, which is limited, you know, caveat, but equally those languages now, they're so high level that they're abstracting a lot of the lower level languages that, you know, like I said earlier, it seems that you can do a lot of different things and program in different areas. So yeah, I mean, it's I suppose it doesn't necessarily matter which language you take, you know, to a certain extent, because they're kind of all transposable, you know, especially with cloud platforms. So I mean, you hinted towards the fact that, you know, at some stage you'd like to, you know, start looking at cloud platforms, with it being Azure or AWS. I mean, what's your view of the industry at the moment, Anais, in terms of that cloud? So, you know, and obviously I don't know the level of depth that you've had up to now with your journey, but you know, how does it appear to you in terms of where is the industry going in terms of cloud, and what does that mean for kind of people that work in the industry, do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is, I think, maybe a really shallow point of view that I'm going to provide now. Just from what I've seen is that there's, on one hand, there are lots of tools that try to make the space more accessible through, for example, specific UIs. And so more people have access to it or can get started. So on one hand, everything is getting really abstracted and made as simple as possible, right? And on the other hand, I feel like cloud providers and a lot of specialized tools are getting a lot more complex. And as more people get into the market, get into the industry and to the area, come up with new tools, they get, to some extent, I mean, the space broadens and there are more possibilities, but at the same time I think it's getting more complex. And like every day I see something, like a new tool that looks highly similar to another tool, and then you have to try to figure out the difference, and you have to try to navigate the space, and without the right resources, the right learning resources, it's really difficult, right? And people get confused and intimidated by that. So that's kind of what I'm seeing. Yeah, or like my impression.
No, and that's, you know, that's, it's great to hear, because yeah, it's the same as mine. I think you're right. You know, I just to pick you up on what you said there. Yeah. You're right. Is that, you know, you look at the cloud platform and some of the things to enable companies and businesses to start transitioning or going on that cloud journey. Obviously, from that point of view, you can understand why the likes of Microsoft and Amazon would, and Google would want to make that barrier to entry as kind of painless as possible. But I think for me, doing the job that I do, that's almost like a double-edged sword almost, because on one hand, people think, oh, the cloud, it's simple. We can spin this up in 10 minutes. We can do that in 20 minutes. And sometimes they go running off that. So when you're there trying to speak to a customer about, as you've just put it, things on the other side that are getting more complicated that actually will have an impact, that's made it quite, a really strange dynamic to talk about, because on one hand, customers, in my experience, expect the world on a plate within a day or 2 days because it's the cloud, but then you kind of have to explain that actually where you're coming from is maybe they're a little bit out of date with their systems that they're running internally, and there is this journey to get to. So and I guess that's the same with learnings as well, Anais, in terms that you're currently focusing on Kubernetes, which is definitely, in my experience, an area that is gaining traction on a, I know it's been around for a number of years now, and I think I first heard of Kubernetes at one of the Ignite sessions probably about 4 years ago. And at the time, as an IT pro, I looked at it and thought, yeah, that's development stuff. I don't need to know about that. And that's 4 years ago. And I didn't look at it, and I still kind of haven't looked at it, but I, know a lot more about it now. And as you go, you find actually this is the way that the industry is kind of going at the moment, for good or bad. We're not saying that necessarily that's the right way. And I think the last conversation I had with my previous guest on the show was exactly that. When would you use Kubernetes and when wouldn't you use Kubernetes? And it's like, well, that depends. There's that whole answer. So, I mean, it's just really great to see how you're tackling these challenges. I mean, are there any hints or tips that you'd have for anybody looking, in a similar position to yourself, looking to learn a particular area of technology? Have you got any, great tips or hints that you could give those kind of people?
Yeah, so I think there are two main ones. The first one, which I kind of mentioned throughout the conversation, I guess, is really just try it out. Nothing can go wrong usually. As long as you're not setting something up that you might have to pay for a lot, right?
Yes.
you can try it out, right? In a lot of cases, like for Kubernetes, there are playground environments online that you can use. So you don't have to install anything locally. You don't have to spin anything up, right? It's just about trying it out, getting experience, and then maybe you find some resources or some other areas that you're more interested in, and then to build from there. And then the second point is that I think, and what kind of something that surprised me a lot, is how helpful the community is. So if you just, if you're looking for help, if you're looking for support, there are so many people who want to spend their time helping the community and who gladly answer your questions and support you in your learning journey and provide you with further input and feedback and so on. So if you're stuck somewhere, get a Twitter account, tweet it out, text some people, look for people who have maybe tweeted something with a hashtag Kubernetes, DevOps, or similar. That's how I got started with looking for 100 days off, and then found 100 days of cloud. And I was like, hey, that's interesting. I want to do something similar. So yeah, I think that the space is it's really welcoming and inclusive and open. And if you put your mind to it and you reach out and share what you're learning and give back to the community, everybody is really happy to help you out and get you started. So
yeah, I echo those thoughts 100%. I think that's been similar experience for myself. I think is it primarily Twitter that you use for that social engagement, or do you have local user groups or things like that you try to attend? What's that like for you, Anais?
Yeah, so before DevOps, it was definitely the meetup groups and discussion groups and conferences were a big thing for me. With everything that's going on, the lockdown and so on, it's definitely a lot more difficult, right? So right now my main tool is Twitter, and also attending online webinars and meetups and trying to get involved. Yeah.
So in terms of community, Nay, obviously you said about Twitter, is that your primary sort of tool that you use to engage with the community, or have you got any other ways that you go and engage at the moment?
So right now it's mainly Twitter, but I'm also trying to attend online webinars, meetup groups, and just get involved. And I mean, initiatives like this are amazing. Just reach out to people. I also reach out to people where I was like, hey, I would love to be on your show. I think I would provide some really valuable input and so on, right? So it's really like it's bi-directional, I guess. But my main tool is Twitter, and I think a lot of engagement starts originally on Twitter and then goes to other areas. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like I say, I echo your thoughts around Twitter being a fantastic space, and you're right. The community out there is so helpful and open to people of all sort of backgrounds. It's so inclusive in terms of, it doesn't matter if you're a seasoned veteran, if you're a complete novice to the particular technology that you're looking at. There's always somebody out there that's willing to put that, sometimes go over and above that you'd ever expect anybody to kind of help you. It's fantastic to see. So, I mean, in terms of community, have you got any engagements coming up? Anything else that you're on the horizon that you're going to be actively involved with?
I mean, I have several different webinars and like community meetups coming up. For example, next week, I'm actually speaking at the Glasgow Azure user group.
Cool. Yeah,
just
brilliant.
showing how you can use different tools together and implement GitOps in your workflow. So I'm really excited for that. I hope it's going to work out.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's something I think it's really exciting. I'm looking forward to. And then just in general, these kind of speaking opportunities and giving back to the community and seeing how I can get more involved with the community. Yeah.
Well, I mean, on that note, Anais, it's been fantastic to talk to you. I mean, some of the things we've gone through with this whole myriad of conversation, but it's fantastic to see what you're doing at the moment.
Thank you.
If I just flick back to your webpage, so we'll put all the links to your to the DevOps Diary. We've got your YouTube account. You're also on Git as well. You've got a few Git repos up there that I'm guessing you're storing some of your code that you're learning from. And we'll make all these available in the links below or on the side, wherever it is, for whichever platform you're watching on at the moment. But no, and honestly, awesome. I mean, are there any other parting thoughts now before we wrap up the conversation?
This has been really great, and keep doing with it. Like, keep going with it, and it's great. Yeah, it's great to see you and your channel, and maybe next time you can be on my channel.
Oh, absolutely. Awesome. Without a doubt, I'll get some flashing lights sorted ready for that one.
Great.
But no, honestly,
awesome.
It's been great. It's been great to speak to you today. Thanks so much for giving up your time to come and have a chat with me.
Thank you.
And we'll catch you all soon. Thanks, Anais.
Bye.